Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome to another edition of Kal's Corner Radio Show here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff and I'm your host, and the executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Folks, we have what I hope is an interesting show for you this evening. As usual, people who normally follow this show, you know that we cover everything from politics to the paranormal. Today's episode is not going to be any different than that, but it will be a little bit all over the map. First thing I want to talk about, of course, is the huge story. Drudge is calling it Wiki Freaks instead of WikiLeaks. It's about the arrest of Julien Assange, who, of course, is the founder or co-founder of WikiLeaks, at least the main guy there that gets all the publicity. WikiLeaks is not a one-man organization. Let's briefly review the ramifications of this development and explain and try to understand why things have reached this level. Now, if you may remember, many years ago, we're talking also, around the time of the early 2000s, you had WikiLeaks, which claimed that it was an organization dedicated to transparency and accountability, meaning if there was funny stuff going on, as in illegal activities, money laundering, corruption, whatever, WikiLeaks, at least based on their mission statement, you could take the documents you had as a whistleblower, upload them anonymously to their web servers. They would then have people go through and scrub the data, make sure it was actually valid and checked out. Then they'd go ahead and release it. When I say scrub, they also did other things. In some of the documents that they did release, where the names of U.S. personnel would be listed, WikiLeaks, when they release this material, would make a point to try to redact and protect information whose release might, cause a problem if a U.S. soldier's name was published and he had participated in a cleansing operation to get Taliban out of the village. Let's say that operation didn't go perfectly, wasn't any of this soldier's fault, but he was part of the group of soldiers who were there. He could be a target by some of the terrorists there, just the fact that he's an American and part of the U.S. military, let alone if he was in an operation they didn't like. So one of the criticisms of WikiLeaks in the early years is that as they were releasing material, was it going to endanger the safety and security of the United States government, being one example. Now, you must remember, and it's important to review this because you have to compare what was going on then versus the so-called consensus now. If you look at WikiLeaks, it was treated at first originally as basically a nonprofit organization, again, whose intention was to bring in accountability, transparency, try to expose corruption in the government, in large businesses, at major levels of society, whatever it was. And then when they started releasing material, the media loved them. The media loved them because they gave them good stories. You know, a corruption, a scandal. Scandals always sell if it's big enough, especially. And then what happened is they started to really upset a lot of people. And I don't mean the people they were exposing. I mean not only entire governments, but alliances of governments. Now, let's kind of try to navigate our way through the minefield here to understand this clearly. We must remember that the major documents that WikiLeaks had released, there have been many of them, they've come in kind of large batches over certain issues. One of the earliest set of documents were documents proving that there were atrocities going on in Iraq. They were done by coalition forces, including Americans. Let's be blunt about it. There were video that was released that was just gut-wrenching. It would show the U.S. murdering civilians in Iraq. These were even kids. And of course, these weren't terrorists. But what would happen is there may have been a terrorist in the area, and instead of going after that terrorist, maybe he was in the home with his family or relatives or whatever, they would just level the whole building or take out the whole block. The terrorist is dead, but so are a lot of other people, some of whom were innocent. Now you may say, well, what do you mean some of whom were innocent? If the terrorist was the only guilty guy, how could not everyone else be innocent? And then that makes it a slaughter of innocent people plus one terrorist. Well, it's not that simple. And this is where it became very problematical for the U.S. government when George Bush was out of office after 2 terms in the White House, and he was replaced by a guy named Barack Obama, because it got even more convoluted. And I'm going to share with you something that is true, but it's not widely reported. I reported on it as a journalist because I was morally outraged, especially since this was coming from Obama, because he ran in part on a platform to fix and not behave like George Bush. And yet he was even worse where it comes to dealing with Iraq at times. And let me prove it. Again, you will remember, because you can easily search these on the internet, you will see that there was footage released of American troops killing innocent people, terrorists as well. But we're not supposed to kill innocent people. Nobody is. Innocent people are innocent people. And the U.S. military does justify itself on its human rights record, upholding human rights, the Geneva Convention, and so on. But the attacks of 9/11 were a bit different, meaning, according to U.S. law, and this has been subsequently upheld by a lot of countries and including the United Nations itself, terrorists are designated not as criminals, but as hostile combatants. That's the fancy term we like to use. Just call them a terrorist. And let me tell you why this distinction is very important, because it explains why it's different now versus, say, in the 70s or 80s. You must remember that terrorists have been around for a long time, thousands of years throughout known history. So what used to happen in the United States is that whenever a terrorist did whatever, they would be captured at some point, hopefully, taken alive, hopefully, then prosecuted, okay? And they would be treated like a criminal who did acts of terror, but they're still criminals. So they had a lawyer, full legal civil rights, and so on. And if you didn't fly straight and you tried to violate them or go against the laws that the Constitution offers protection-wise, of course he could walk free because it was an abuse of the justice system, abuse of, a citizen. Okay, fine. That's how it was before. And it seemed that the war against terrorists was going okay. Look at what happened in the Oklahoma City bombing, okay? Was that a Islamic jihadi type from Al-Qaeda or the Taliban? No, it was an American. And what he did is he destroyed that building. Hundreds of people were killed. Terrible terrorist attack, domestic terrorist attack. But when McVeigh was put on trial, he was put through the system just like anybody else. The charges were specific to him because he did it. But other than that, he enjoyed the full protections and privileges, if you will, of the system such as they are, meaning he could, he could watch TV, he could read, he could do whatever they do in prison. He has those rights. Now what happened is 9/11 happened, and the attitude of the U.S. government changed. You must remember that President George Bush at that time was so upset over the attacks, and I understand that. I think any person with any decent moral framework would be. You don't like to see innocent people killed. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what country they are. It doesn't matter who they are. They're human beings. And yet there was over 2,000 people killed on 9/11. And what happened is all of a sudden terrorism was taken out of just being a crime internationally. It was put into a special category where these people don't have rights accorded to them in the rules of war, known as the Geneva Convention protections. They don't even have civil rights. Not only can you kill them, you don't need a warrant. You can torture them. You can do a thing that's called rendition, where you grab them from wherever they are, take them to God knows where, do whatever to them, and then you can make them disappear officially where there's no trace of them, or you can actually make them literally disappear and just kill them. In other words, these terrorists are yours to do what you want with them. That is exactly how the justice system in many countries now works, such as it is, in dealing with radical Islamic terrorists. Okay? Now, in Europe, it's a little bit different. They like to give you all these little rights and whatever you want to call it. And what ends up happening is if Johnny Terrorist is captured and found guilty, he gets to spend the rest of his life in prison. They're not going to kill him with the death penalty. Whereas in the U.S., they may do that, or in Russia or in other countries. Personally, I believe in the death penalty because I think that there are some crimes that are so terrible that if you do them, you deserve to have your life taken from you. The reason I think we need to do that is because if we don't, then what we're saying is that the crime of murder doesn't really matter, that I can commit genocide. I can wipe out millions of people or entire races like Hitler tried to do, and it's okay. You can't kill me because I have rights. I'm a human being. Well, I think that's wrong because human life either means something or it means nothing at all. Our moral code either means what it does or it means nothing at all. And I'll tell you real quickly, I've had this conversation many times, especially with these young millennial types whose moral framework, let me just put it this way, I'm still trying to locate somewhere in the galaxy. I think it's in the Milky Way galaxy somewhere. But if I can't find it soon, I'm going to start checking the Pleiades, I promise you. So what we see here is I remember some conversations in Prague. I remember I was seeing a woman who worked with Amnesty, very beautiful woman, very nice, incredible, peaceful, loving woman, wouldn't hurt a fly. So I asked her one day, I said, you Czech, your relatives suffered under the Nazis, under communism. You know people who died at the hands of the Nazis. You're in a country that was occupied by Hitler because the West gave you to him. They didn't even check with you guys. They didn't care. What if Hitler were caught at the end of the war? What would you do? Would you have him killed for crimes against humanity, for genocide and all that other stuff? She told me that Hitler was different. Okay? So I want you to get your mind around that. It's okay to kill Hitler, even though she's against the death penalty, but everyone else you can't kill. And what we'll do is we'll talk about that after the commercial break and explain why that is very dicey.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shaman worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome back to the second segment here on Kal's Corner Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. I was sharing with you a true story from my 10 years in Europe. Again, there was a very nice lady who was a friend of mine. She did a lot of work for Amnesty International. And Amnesty is very popular among the youth of the Czech Republic, of course, with a lot of young people. It's a very idealistic organization. But I'll be honest with you, it drives me nuts because Amnesty does not believe in the death penalty under any circumstances. And I'm not exaggerating when I say to you that if somebody, God forbid one day, a single person wipes out all the life on this planet except for that individual and an individual from Amnesty International, if you were to then ask that one survivor, should this guy be killed for what he did, they'd still say no. I just think that that is just morally bankrupt. When you say that you value human life so much and human rights so much that you won't stop somebody from committing genocide by just killing him because you're trying to protect the whole planet, it just doesn't make any sense. I think the earth would be flat before this other view would make sense. And we know the earth is not flat. Okay, so I'm talking to her and I said, what about Hitler? What if he were captured at the end of World War II by the Czechs, taken prisoner, put on trial, found guilty of everything he is guilty of and then some? Or let's just limit it to what we know he did, and there's no question it's true. The Holocaust, take that as one example. The genocide in Russia. What would happen? What would you do once he's found guilty? She said, well, that's different. Hitler's different. I said, no, he's not. Because you just told me in an earlier part of this conversation that you didn't like the fact that the United States wanted Slobodan Milosevic killed as a punishment, that's just for the genocide he committed in Serbia, okay? But it's okay to kill Hitler because of the genocide he committed. I thought all genocides were pretty much equal, but I guess you don't think that. So at this point, she really didn't know how to handle the conversation because I was being, a bit cheeky in the sense of trying to point out the irony and hypocrisy in her point, but also trying to be polite. She's also a friend. And she finally said she didn't really know how to resolve it. She had a conflict inside. I said it's simple to resolve it. Once you cross a line on certain crimes, you're dead. That's it. Okay? Just like if you use a gun in a crime, in some states, that's another 10 years right there on your sentence. Let's say you rob a bank. Let's say that's 5-year prison sentence automatically. But let's say you pull out a gun and do it. There's another 10 years. I have no problem with that extra penalty because you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. You shouldn't be robbing a bank and you shouldn't be pulling guns on people. Not under those circumstances. Absolutely not. So, of course, you're going to have more penalties. So she was saying if you committed crimes up to a certain point, it's okay, like Slobodan Milosevic, the genocide he committed was okay, although she's against genocide. But the genocide Hitler committed was on such a larger scale that, yes, he should be killed. Okay, that's hypocrisy. I will tell you she's the only person at Amnesty I've ever spoken with, and we've remained friends, where she feels that way. All the other people I've ever spoken to at Amnesty, I know them, they're colleagues, they're not really close friends, but every one of them believes that Hitler should not have been killed. They should have given him life in prison with 3 square meals a day. In fact, some said anybody who's on death row, even though they're not going to be killed, they should be able to go to college while they're incarcerated. Make them productive, at least for the rest of their life, however long. I'm sorry. Once you cross the line, folks, that's it. If society didn't work that way, I don't think there would be a society. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because this issue brings up a head of what to do with Julien Assange. Because let me give you a real example of something the United States government did under Obama that was just absolutely terrible. I argue that if Bush had done this, there would have been calls for him and his impeachment. But let's remember that the people who backed Obama, and I knew a lot of people who backed Obama, they were so hardcore, even one of my best friends, that they would start doing the cheap attacks of, oh, does it bother you he's black? Is that why you're criticizing him? No, it doesn't. Not at all. I don't care what color his skin is. What I care about is his point and where he's wrong, and I care about where he's right as well. So let me tell you what they did that is absolutely terrible, and I will tell you how I covered it as a journalist and why it is absolutely relevant to what has happened with WikiLeaks now and Assange. In the aftermath of the leaking of the horrible footage of the U.S. committing atrocities against innocent civilians, there was, of course, an outrage. There was an outrage from the left, and the left, who gets a lot of things wrong, had a right to be outraged. There was even an outrage from the right. The ones who were far right said, oh, they should have killed them all, but that's not the right way to look at this issue. The issue is you killed innocent people, period. Doesn't matter who they were innocent. Innocent either means what it does or it means nothing at all. So what Bush did is he changed the rules of engagement and backed off a bit. The number of drone strikes and assaults that were going on went down. The concern was, okay, it'll go down for a while, but we've got to rein it in a bit, get control of this again. But the bottom line remains the same. The terrorists are going to keep coming. They're going to keep killing. And if we limit ourselves too much, we destroy our ability to fight a war as it should be fought. So what did Obama do to solve this problem? Well, he did something that I don't even think George Bush would be cold enough to do. And we must remember that Bush lied, and other politicians, about the degree of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And because of that, a war started. Over 1 million people were killed. And Iraq today is not the beacon of stability. Neither is Libya. And that was another thing that, in that case, Obama messed up, not Bush. But let me tell you what Obama did. Obama was asked when he was running for president about the issue of drone strikes and killing innocent civilians and so on. The left, CNN, the liberal media, they believe that people like Hitler should get a comfortable life in prison. They don't believe in the death penalty. They're that out to lunch, in my opinion. They don't believe in responsibility. Look at how they didn't bend over backwards to say, I'm sorry, over the false charges against Trump they've made over these past 2 years, which have blown up in their face. Keyword, collusion, okay? None, apparently, unless the Attorney General is lying, and we will find out in about a week or two. Now, back to Obama, here's what he did. And when I found this out as a journalist, I exposed it in Daily Post newspaper and then later in Daily World. What he did was this. The CIA came to him and said, Mr. President, here's how we think we need to solve this problem. We know that terrorists, especially in the Islamic world, they have big families. They hide and help each other out. It's very tribal there. This is not a racist remark. It is a tribal mentality in that part of the world. It is also a tribal mentality in Pakistan and India. I know that from firsthand observation. It is tribal, okay? Fine, that's the way they are. The West is less tribal. But here's what the CIA did. They said, Mr. President, and again, this is to Obama, they said, look, the odds are that a lot of these terrorists are going to be with a relative, an uncle, a nephew, whatever. They're going to be there. And of course, some terrorist groups like Hamas, they'll make a point the terrorists will make a point to hide out in schools or where kids are, where civilians are. And Israel is forced to give advance notice to everyone in a building before they destroy it to get the Hamas terrorists to leave the building now, or if you stay in there, you're going to be taken out. We warned you. It's your problem if you don't listen. Israel does that. Israel is one of the few countries that will actually give advance warning. So what the CIA did is said, Mr. President, we can't eliminate this problem. So here's what we propose. We propose that when we attack a site from a drone, if it kills 5 people in there, and we find out, for example, that there's 5 dead bodies, and one of them is Uncle Akbar or whatever, the terrorist, and the other guys are his family relatives, they're innocent. As long as all of them are 16 years or younger, we will consider them to be innocent civilians that shouldn't have been killed. Sorry about that. We'll even pay compensation, okay? But if they're at least 16 years old, at least 16, that's the key here, folks, they're terrorists automatically. They knew their uncle Abu Jihad was a terrorist. They weren't innocent. They were accomplices by Western definition of law. Yes, technically that's true. If you know that your uncle Abu Jihad robbed a bank and you knew it, you could be charged as an accomplice or at least part of a conspiracy to rob a bank, even though you didn't participate in it, okay? So their idea is these families know their relatives belong to whatever jihad cause, Al-Qaeda, whatever. These aren't sweet, innocent relatives, meaning they know. Half of them believe in that cause or whatever the number is. So if they're over 16, they're a terrorist as well. Well, that's exactly what happened. Obama agreed to it. And the statistics that were kept from that point on were then altered, meaning it was garbage in and garbage came out of the computer results. The spreadsheets, the people that crunch the numbers of bodies that are killed and all that stuff when these attacks happen and these raids from drones and airstrikes and all that. So what you saw, and you can Google this, is the White House under Obama bending over backwards to say, hey, we have greatly reduced the number of civilian deaths trying to get terrorists with drone strikes. In fact, there were times where Obama almost eliminated all drone strikes for a year at a time or whatever. And we've raised the number of terrorists who have been killed, but lowered the civilian deaths. Well, yeah, they did. If you want to deny reality and you want to make a false assumption, they told you the truth. But in reality, what they did was kill more innocent people. But history doesn't record that in the official statistics. And I'll prove that after the commercial break here. And we'll continue talking about this and why it's related to WikiLeaks and a ultimate moral decision that the world is going to have to make if they're going to put Julien Assange on trial.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Elie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Welcome back to the third segment here on Kal's Corner Radio Show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, as I was saying in the previous segment, what the Obama administration did was to essentially cook the books and lie to the world about how it was handling the issue of killing terrorists in drone strikes and other military raids versus how many innocent civilians would also get killed or caught up in that action. We must remember that thanks to WikiLeaks, meaning they did it, they leaked material that proved the U.S. government had, on occasions, deliberately massacred innocent people. There were other times where it was just pure accident. There are other times where they didn't bother to find out who was guilty or innocent or not, and they killed everybody there anyway. There were war crimes committed, at least based on the video you see of the gun footage from these attack helicopters. It is plain obvious what atrocities have happened. Now, having said that, fog of war and all those other considerations, again, the Bush administration had to take a hard look, and they did, at how do we handle this more responsibly and not have these problems? Well, the Obama administration came up with the worst solution possible, which meant it didn't address the issue at all. Now, we've seen that pattern before. Look at the Iran deal. It didn't keep Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. It kicked the can down the road till 2 terms after Hillary would have been the president. That was the plan. Didn't work out that way. So what the CIA did is they convinced Obama to say, okay, everyone who's 16 or over is a terrorist if they're killed in a drone strike. So if there is a terrorist who's 30 from Al-Qaeda, let's say he's their bomb maker, and he happened to be visiting his relative, and that relative is over 16, of course, and they have 3 kids, and they're under 16. Let's say there's one 5, 7, and 9 years old. Do you know how many terrorists were killed in that attack that day in the minds of the Obama administration? Do the math. 5 terrorists killed. Now, how many real terrorists were killed? Well, the guy from Al-Qaeda, fine, he's a real terrorist. The relative who let him stay there, he may or may not have been involved. We don't know, because the building's obliterated. If there was any paper records, they're gone. They're incinerated. He may have helped. He may not have. He may have just let the guy visit his nephews. We don't know. And then you got the 3 kids. Were they terrorists? Were they strapping on suicide bombs? Were they trying to kill people? Probably not. Now, I'm not saying maybe they're not being brainwashed in the ideology. Who knows? But that's not the same thing as being a so-called card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda, so to speak. So all of a sudden, you can Google it, the number of terrorists killed in drone strikes went up. And the number of civilian deaths went down so much that we must have the smartest weapons in the universe. In fact, even smarter than the weapons in Star Trek and Star Trek, because Star Wars and Star Trek, because they tend to kill only the terrorists. No. In fact, things got so convoluted in the way the Obama administration was handling things in the Iraq War that even John Kerry said that he was unaware of any civilian casualties. I reported on that remark. I was like, excuse me? If you say that because you've been smoking the wrong thing, change what you're smoking. Come on, no civilian casualties? Not even an accident? No, that's ridiculous. But we heard that kind of stuff. And probably the biggest thing that Obama did wrong in Iraq is he pulled out just to keep a political promise. That's all. Before he should have. It left the country vulnerable. And guess what happened? Nature hates a vacuum. So Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State came in there, formed an alliance, and it took years to finally defeat the Islamic State in Syria, like was done about 10, 12 days ago. They're still out there. The leader is still out there, believed to be alive. But their so-called caliphate and the home of it is defeated. And now Syria can move in there. That's not really progress. It's another atrocity coming. So this is what has happened in these countries. Here you have the previous administration under Bush lying about the war against terror. You had WikiLeaks leaking the documents that allowed history to be corrected. And he was praised for it. The news media organizations bent over backwards to praise WikiLeaks for releasing footage of atrocities being committed by Western forces against Muslims. Now, then WikiLeaks starts leaking more data during Obama's administration. Only this time, the data shows that Obama is not the saint that his PR spin misleads people to believe. Same with Hillary Clinton, who's his Secretary of State. Remember what happened when Manning released all those memos, those files, hundreds of thousands of files. It identified all kinds of stuff that the U.S. government was doing that was just a pure lie. We got to see what Hillary Clinton really thought of some world leaders when she was talking behind their back. She actually had to go on a tour. Google it. Hillary Clinton's apology tour. She literally traveled around the world apologizing for essentially BSing and lying to a lot of our allies from an administration who said, I'm not like George Bush, I'll tell you the truth, transparency, accountability. Obama said, this is the most transparent and accountable administration in all of American history. Well, yeah, if you like things to be clear as mud, okay? And then there was a problem with Obama himself because he did something that no other president had done against a journalist. Remember when there was a leak over some sources concerning Iran and Iraq regarding the role of Valery Pahlavi, things that were going on in Afghanistan. A couple of journalists were actually going to be prosecuted by the Justice Department under Obama. Eric Holder was the Attorney General. And then what did Obama do after his second term in office? He drops all the charges. After he financially pretty much cleans the closet out on these journalists. These were reporters from the New York Times who refused to divulge their sources. And yet Obama's saying he upholds freedom of the press. He believes in the shield laws, protecting those sources. Now, it was Bush who had originally filed the charges, let's be clear. But Obama, Mr. I'm different, change we can believe in, he should have come in and stopped it, but he didn't. He continued it, took it to the next level, carried it on another 4 years, dropped it finally after he got reelected. It was just wrong. You're not supposed to abuse laws like that, but he did. And it's not the only case. Look at Dinesh D'Souza. He got nailed on an obscure campaign finance law. Well, it's no secret that Obama and Holder hated his documentaries. Yes, they exaggerate some things here and there. Absolutely. And they're right-wing. Absolutely. And they don't like the liberal view. But there's a lot of things he said that are true. And what matters is what he said. That's true. That's the important part. If something he said was false, why it was false is the important issue. So now what happened is these documents come out. regarding stuff going on during the Afghan war and in Iraq. And they present a mixed bag, an insight view, if you will, into what's really going on in the U.S. government. Well, at that point again, WikiLeaks was praised for blowing open this stuff. And the pattern here is it made the U.S. look bad. And the liberal media loved it, even the American media, because they were against these wars anyway. Now, I can tell you that's a bit of a bizarre thing, meaning I can't imagine anybody, I can't relate to the mentality who would look at 9/11 and say, why shouldn't we go get those guys? Well, they say, well, Iraq was a different thing because Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. No, he didn't. But there was a larger issue going on at the time. And I'm not going to go into that for the rest of the show because it literally is a show unto itself. But you must remember that when Bush was trying to put democracy, forcing it in there in the Middle East, Barack Obama did the same thing again. He just did it differently. Do you think Gaddafi left voluntarily, stepped down from the dictatorship he held over Libya all those decades? No. They killed him. They killed him publicly in ways that we're not supposed to do that. And the U.S. helped, along with British special forces, locate Gaddafi, make sure the rebels knew where he was so they could kill him. All right? That is a fact. And Hillary Clinton was involved in that decision. So was Barack Obama. And remember, Barack Obama had said that what he was going to do is he had drawn a red line in the sand that if Assad used in Syria, the dictator of Syria, chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, that was a red line in the sand. It would mean military action. Didn't happen. What happened was when Obama went to ask about taking that step, talk to France, Great Britain, they both told him no. That's how much of an ally they were. Nowadays, France and Great Britain are jumping over backwards to punish Syria under Trump. I'm not saying they love Trump. Britain has issues with Trump. So does France. In fact, it seems everyone has issues with Trump. Fine. But it's very different now how U.S. is showing and flexing its muscles foreign policy-wise. One of the first things Trump did, and he was right, was he took off the chains of some of these commanders in the field who always had to phone Barack Obama himself, so to speak, to get permission to fire a missile on a terrorist from a drone strike. Trump said, you're in the field. We don't have time to run up chain of command. You take the shot. You're empowered to do it. We'll deal with it afterwards if you're wrong or whatever. You will be held accountable. But since then, the numbers have gone up a lot with drone strikes, and they've gone up for the right reasons, not lying for the wrong reasons. All right, in our last segment after this commercial break, we'll explain why all of this is relevant to WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden, and how this will reach a peak when they decide what to do in court about Assange now that he has been arrested.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Elie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
SIMULTV.com, sonny boy.
SIMULTV.com.
SIMULTV.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
SIMULTV.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. SIMULTV.com.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner Radio Show on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. The executive producer of the show is Rob McConnell. Now, we're talking about, in the first three segments, a lot of stuff, giving you some background in history, a lot of stuff people have just plain forgotten or were not aware of. Most people, to be honest, they've heard of WikiLeaks, but they've never really bothered to read through their files. There's millions of them on their site. I've gone through them over the years. I, in fact, downloaded entire archives before they were decompressed, and in the event that they would disappear later, because no one knew. Thank God they didn't. They stayed out there, so I still have my copies, and many other people do. Now, we must remember that the pattern here is one that at first was considered globally, unless you were the victim of the leaks, to be an admirable one. Here was a whistleblowing organization, a nonprofit, an entity called WikiLeaks, where people could upload documents, report wrongdoing. They would be protected, would remain anonymous. The documents would be verified, and then they would be released to the public. And by putting them in the hands of the media, theoretically, they would be spread all over the world, and there would be this outrage or reaction, and heads would roll, or people would be held accountable. Good stuff. And you must remember that WikiLeaks had a partnership with major publications, like the Washington Post, New York Times. In fact, some of them turned WikiLeaks down only to bend over backwards to say, oh, darn it, our competitors got the scoop instead. WikiLeaks, we love you. We won't do that again. Please work with us in the future. And you saw this happen. It really did happen. In fact, it happened again with the release of the Edward Snowden documents, and Snowden wasn't involved in WikiLeaks. He was a worker, an analyst at the NSA, and what he did is he sweet-talked a bunch of people there, especially females, and because security was not what it should have been, he got access to stuff he shouldn't, used other people's computers, asked them for their passwords. Stupidly, they gave it to him because they trusted him. Well, having worked in as an intelligence analyst myself, having worked at Boeing, Lawrence Livermore Lab, I can tell you that you don't give your password out to anybody, or you change it immediately afterwards if you have to give it out. I remember there were times where IT would come out, even though I'm in IT, trying to do something, connecting my terminal with the mainframe, the back end guys. They would say, give me your passwords, I can type it in. No, you turn around, I'll type it in, then you can continue. And these are obvious rules that you're not supposed to break, but they did, and the people were punished for giving him their passwords. So he copies all these files, puts them on a series of drives, leaves the United States, goes on this little merry-go-round around, with Asia, contacts Greenwald, the reporter. They had worked with other reporters to vet this file, this material, and then it was published. And then when Snowden went to Russia as Putin's guest, he's still there, who helped him go over there? Well, that was WikiLeaks. Snowden worked with Assange and WikiLeaks for help in handling the last couple of phases of this plan to do things and get out of there before he could be caught in Asia and renditioned back to the United States for prosecution. This would be Edward Snowden. Now, at this point, this is when things turned pretty much the way they are now for WikiLeaks. That and the accusations of rape by two women in Sweden against Assange himself. But we have to separate any claims against Assange as an individual versus the organization itself. The indictment that has been leaked out today by the U.S. government charges WikiLeaks with essentially hacking. Now, again, you have to be careful here because, again, the media has blown this and so have law enforcement officials. Even now today, you still hear the media saying that Russia hacked the Democratic National Party computers. No, it's not that simple, folks. And if you're an IT guy, you know this. What happened, and we've talked about this on the show, when you hack something, you try to break into it. Okay, there's another term called a cracker. A cracker tries to crack codes and things. A hacker will try to hack his way, break his way into something, trying a number of different methods. Could be passwords, could be whatever. Depends on what you're trying to do, what type of system you're running, all that stuff. None of that happened. What happened was the Podesta campaign, Hillary's brilliant campaign manager, John Podesta, opened his kimono and let Russia in. And he didn't know he was doing it because he's John Podesta. I'll just put it that way. Now, if you use the internet a lot over the years, a lot of you listening to this may have gotten an email from Google at some point over the past year saying, due to a security issue, you have to log in and change your password immediately. Please click on this link so you can do it to make sure your account is still safe. Okay, fine. You say, wow, okay, I'm glad Google's telling me they've been hacked or they've been under attack. I should change my password to be safe. Well, that would fool most people. And that little dirty phishing trick, phishing, not fishing, like fishing for a fish in the water, but phishing as in impersonating somebody or something. That's an IT term for what really happened. So it turns out that John Podesta got an email from a phony Google account, and it said, same thing. I got this message too off and on over the years. I'm not dumb enough to click on it. What happened was he clicked on it, thought he was logging into Google, and when he changed his password, maybe even his username, who knows. You must remember, folks, that you're vulnerable in one key way when you use your email. Most email is in the name of the person. If my name's John Smith, I might be johnsmith24@yahoo.com or johnsmith@yahoo.com. Well, if your name is needed to log in and your password, and you can pretty much guess what the username is, the guy's name, duh, you've already solved 50% of the problem. You just need to figure out the password at that point. Now, what if I change my name, my username to Captain XYPQRD? That's probably harder to figure out than using my name, Kal Korff. So these are basic things that people could do, but they just don't bother because they just don't bother, even when they know. So Podesta's IT whiz, whatever you want to call him, he didn't have them doing this kind of practice. And what happened is they clicked on the link, and when he changed his password, the Podesta campaign, they sent straight to Russian intelligence, the new password. So they didn't have to hack anything. They were given a spare key. They used it and got in there because, they had the password. They didn't have to crack anything open. They were given it. It's like, here, come on in. Now, you might say, well, that's still hacking because you're doing it illegally. Well, yeah, but see, that's kind of a retrofitted definition of hacking because from a pure IT standpoint, that's not what hacking is. And this is where it's going to get very interesting because there's a pattern here. When Snowden worked with WikiLeaks to steal those documents, as in get them out and then safely physically to Russia, WikiLeaks was not involved in the theft of those documents from the NSA by Snowden. Snowden did it himself. That's when how WikiLeaks was to be viewed began to change in the minds of governments. They were no longer just a whistleblowing organization. They were no longer just a transparency, accountability forum where people could blow whatever open. No, they were a criminal at this point, an enemy of the United States, someone out there to harm the United States, damage it, no different than if they'd worked for Putin himself or the former KGB or whatever. And that's exactly the type of argument now that the U.S. government and other governments are going to try to make now that they're able to put this guy on trial. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because here's one big hole in that approach. And again, I don't profess to be an expert on this, but having covered this in the past and in published articles over the years, and I figure if I can figure this out, people much smarter on this subject than me, this should be a slam dunk for them. They have to show a clear paper trail and decision process that explains this sudden change in how they defined things. Because you can't pick and choose your definitions to suit the moment. Real law doesn't work that way. So where's all the laws and all these processes that cause this change out of national security concerns or whatever supposed valid reasons there are that now allow you to charge him differently, even though this indictment is a couple years old? You know, it again is a very interesting can of worms here. And WikiLeaks itself has credibility problems, meaning it absolutely is not going to open cans of worms in certain areas. For example, Assange was criticized rightfully for saying, I don't think Russia poisoned anybody in the UK. They're not behind those deaths. Actually, no, Russia. It's a slam dunk. The radioactive trail was traced all the way back to Russia. It can be done with very advanced equipment. Polonium was used to poison and kill these people. But Assange is not going to search WikiLeaks files. How many stuff blowing open Putin's corruption do you see on there? You don't see any, because WikiLeaks is smart enough not to, let's say, upset everybody on the planet. And they are claiming there's a real assassination fear now. There's no question a lot of governments would like to see him dead or WikiLeaks out of business. But this whole legal thing that's coming, it's unprecedented. It's never been done before. And to be honest, it's a bit shaky. And I don't endorse any of the stuff that they have done other than we have to acknowledge what they did, and we have to acknowledge the stuff they've done that is very wrong. There's also been some good leaks out of them. I wish they'd come from other ways, but they didn't. But that was early on in the early years of the organization when other people were involved, and Assange wasn't the seeming dictator that he has since become since the Snowden incident happened, which still has caused international tensions with Russia and, of course, the United States. We'll be back next week for another episode of Kal's Corner. Thanks for joining me.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.